Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to today's episode of the Create a Life You Love video podcast, where we get to connect with people from all around the world to share tips and strategies to help you on your journey. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Chantel Cox. I'm an author and transformation coach who uses the power of the neuro-coaching model to help high-achieving, motivated women rediscover their passion and purpose in life so that they can rise up, step into their full potential, and create a life that they love. So I'm super excited to be here today with Janis Isaman. Sorry. So Janis helps people move better, feel better, and live better by providing customized, individualized movement and nutrition coaching. Her unique discipline-agnostic approach has helped thousands of people navigate their body issues through education and movement techniques to full body sustainability. She's also a speaker, facilitator, instructor, and mother. So, hey, Janis, how are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Tuesdays are now my new favorite day of the week because I get to connect with people like you.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell us where you're joining us from.
I am in Canada.
Perfect. And what's going on in the world of Canada right now? Because I like to kind of touch base and see where we're at with COVID.
Yeah, that's the grand question for everybody because we now have jurisdictions that are doing completely different things. So in our jurisdiction, which does not represent all of Canada, we are undergoing a second closure. So our businesses who are not retail are closed, and schools are closed for kids that are in grades 7 to 12. So that's all online. And we have social distancing rules where we are not to see anybody who doesn't live in our home. So we have fairly strict, I think, second wave guidelines in place at the moment.
Oh my goodness. And so are those going to last through the holidays?
I don't know. They haven't actually said. So we had a press conference a week ago, and this is the latest round with hopes that they can change some of the numbers and perhaps open up. Everyone is hoping that for the holidays we can perhaps see some family members, but we're kind of sitting waiting for the next press conference to see what's going to happen.
Oh, wow. Fingers crossed that this all kind of goes away soon. And what a crazy time.
It is, and it's never changing time. So we don't know what's going to ever happen in a month. We don't know what's going to happen actually in a week. So
isn't that the truth? So go ahead and share with us a little bit about your journey to create a life that you love.
Yeah, so you gave a great introduction to what I do. I help people feel better in their bodies. And this is actually a second/third career for me. And I've always really chased doing something that I really love. So the career immediately before this was in media. I was in fashion media, and I adored that job. Before we were live, you and I had a bit of a conversation, and my son was walking around in the background, and he was a major life-changing factor for me. So when I was working in my media job, a strong passion for me was health and fitness. So I used it to network. I used it to feel great in my own body. And I would take certifications, and I would take on some, kind of side hustle clients. None of it was really supposed to lead to a second career. And then I found myself in the position where I was a mother, and suddenly my career aspirations and goals and my fit with my day job just wasn't really there, because the job that I worked in was strongly heavied up on evening responsibilities and evening outings and networking. And this isn't a judgment towards anybody else who makes this choice, but I was living in New York City at the time, and I looked at the life that was going to be ahead of me, realized that in order to pursue this career that I love so much and was already involved in, I was going to have to basically take on a full-time nanny position, because it wasn't going to be possible to really be successful in the career that I was working in without that support. And I didn't really want to take that route. So I ended up moving back to Canada and opening a bricks and mortar space and using the skills and passions and the part-time job that I'd had for, honestly, at that point, it was 6.5 or 7 years that I had done this in my spare time. So I had purchased equipment and I had taken certifications and I had seen clients and I had experience in this. And it took me really off guard that I had a fully prepared business to literally walk into, where I had freedom and flexibility and management over my time, which meant it's not an easier life, but it meant that I could show up at school activities and that I could kind of manage that evening work schedule a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had been building skills unknowingly, and then they came in to a great, they were very useful later.
They were very useful later, yes.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people have subsequently asked me, how do you make that career transition? How do you jump? How do you go from career A to career B, especially when you're not 20, which I wasn't. I was in my mid-30s and I was at least 10 years into this. And that was after having another entrepreneurial venture. And it sounds like a snap of a finger that you just go from one to the other. But I did really what was kind of recommended by experts when I looked at it later, which is I took the safety and security of a full-time job and pursued education, and I pursued purchasing items that I would need for a startup business, and I practiced the discipline. So I had clients and I had testimonials and I had already experimented with pricing, and I did all of that at a time in my life when it wasn't a deal breaker whether I was going to pay rent that month or not. And sometimes I look back at some of those expenditures, even some of my certifications, they're quite expensive in my field. And I was able to do that at a time when it wasn't a pressing urgency, again, between whether the business was going to succeed that month with that expenditure or without it. So I think that 6 or 7 year ramp up period was really critical to making that move.
Absolutely. I mean, it just seems like everything happens for a reason and within perfect timing. And had you not taken the time to invest in yourself and in those certifications earlier, when you found yourself later in life, like you wouldn't have had that to fall back on, but you'd done the work and built those skills and had the certifications, had the experience, had a little bit of a client base, had the tools. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and even with all of that, it still was a very different kind of business, and it still was actually shocking to me what the shift was between a part-time side hustle and a full-time day job, what I do for a living right now. But I'm really fortunate in the sense that I went from a career I loved to another career I loved. I didn't go through a phase or a period where I felt like I just really wanted to get out of corporate America, or where I felt like I just am dying to leave this job. So in my case, it was amazing because I went from passion to passion. And the first couple of years, it was really tricky to sort of disentangle myself from the idea that I had left a passion job and gone to another passion job.
Yeah. I don't know that very many people get the opportunity to do that. It's like they're unhappy in their current situation. So then they leave because they're seeking something else. And so that's great that you had it on both ends, and it was situational and by choice and by design, and not I'm just miserable here, let me try anything else.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that I do count myself very fortunate that I was able to leave at a high point in that career. And it's interesting, especially given what that career was. The media has shifted a great deal in the last 10 years. And so I have witnessed that industry really go through a metamorphosis and a change. And I feel like I left at the precise golden moment when things were changing underneath that industry and that business anyway. So it was quite a gift to actually have that opportunity to create my own business and leave that business before it changed so dramatically as it subsequently has.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we're so fortunate to have you with us here tonight because you have all the experience of changing careers, starting your own business, creating a life you love. And fortunately, the business you went into is all about, health and feeling good in your body. And we're about to enter a new year, and it's the time where people are starting to think and do resolutions. I'm not a big fan of the resolutions, but setting goals and
Yeah.
So what tips do you have for us to help others create a life that they love?
Well, I think step one is really moving in towards your passion. So a lot of us really spend a lot of time in our life trying to avoid pain. We avoid things that we think are going to hurt. So we often will structure our life around what we think we're supposed to do and what is going to create the least amount of tension or kind of turmoil within our community or disappointing our family, etc. And I've actually done the opposite, where for whatever reason, I felt like I kind of had a blank slate and I went towards the things that I really loved. And I think you have to know what those are. So that's step one. I help people with that aspect of exercise because a lot of us have in our mind, one of the most common questions I actually get is, do I have to run? And it's because in our head, some of us associate fitness with running. And then the whole idea of what fitness is and being fit turns us off. But this, although it seems kind of comical, this is running throughout threads of everything we're doing in life. Should you buy property? Should you get married? Should you do a certain career for a living? And most of us have at least one should on our list that we're not really doing because we're passionate about it. So I recommend to my clients when it comes to fitness, and this goes for our whole life, is that we probably need to just dig into what we wanted to do as kids, what made us happy, and what would really make us happy now. And I'm not suggesting that you kind of, rip your life up and create crazy turmoil, but you want to start taking steps towards those, and you have to know what they are. And you have to also know what you're doing because you think you should. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is really exercising those small habits and knowing what you're good at. So I'm going to use an example of running my business. When you run a small business, all of us wear a lot of hats. So we have to do the sales and we have to do the marketing. We have to clean the floor if we have a bricks and mortar space, and we have to execute the service, and we have to do accounting, etc. There are some things on that list that I just named that I love doing and that I'm good at. There are other things that I'm terrible at and or hate, and those are often correlated. So I'm not great at admin. I'm not great at accounting. I really actually don't like, and I'm not good at cleaning. But I'm great at marketing and I love it. And so that doesn't mean automatically that we outsource it, but the wheelhouse of things that really make me enjoy my life are the marketing, the executing the service, the client networking, the customer service element, and just delivering these great results to people. So that's where I focus the majority of my energy. And then those other pieces, a lot of them I still have to do. I don't get out of cleaning the floor. But when 90% of my day is the great stuff, that 10% just doesn't feel so bad. That happens in my home as well. I don't love washing the dishes. So I put on a podcast and just do that. But that's not 90% of my home life. So try to work towards that 80 to 90% joy, and the 10% will be fine. You won't really think that it's that terrible. But that's how we design a great fitness program. That's how we design a great business. That's how we design a great adulthood, is we really look at those things that really bring us that abundant level of joy and try to create, a high level of our day where we're doing that.
I love that. If anybody is joining us live, feel free to drop any questions you have for Janis in the chat, and we will get to those at the end here. So yes, you hit on so many good things, and so Yeah, for those of you who know my story, you know what happened when I decided to create a life that I love, and I ended up doing that through dance, and it became such a huge part of my life, and it was the first time when I was excited to wake up in the morning, and I had joy, I had passion, I just had all that stuff, and I found it through dance. And I had never connected it until you just said it the way that you said it now. It's dig into what made you happy as a kid.
Right.
And my parents love to tell the story of when 3-year-old Chantel threw a huge kicking, screaming fit. My dad was in the military, so we were at some like formal ball thing. And it's, 7 o'clock. So it's time to take the 3-year-old home for bedtime. But that's right when the DJ was starting because it was after the dinner. Apparently, I threw a huge kicking, screaming fit in the middle of the dance floor, screaming, I gotta dance! I gotta dance!
That's awesome.
So there you go. Dig into what you loved as a child.
Yeah, it's actually hilarious how life will always circle you back to those things that you were just drawn to as a kid. And it might come to you in a totally different iteration. I have a memory, I was definitely older than you, and I wasn't sporty as a teenager, but one thing that really made me happy was riding my bike and listening to my George Michael cassette. And then I had some songs that I loved to put on repeat. So you would look at the counter on the tape and rewind it until the tape started to wear in that pattern. But when I really look at that as an adult, what I love is that feeling of exercise and moving my body and being outside and kind of just being, I actually don't even love being alone. I'm an extrovert, but exercise is one place I do love being alone. I don't love exercising with other people. And so that pattern still shows up for me as a grown-up, and we all kind of have that. And as a kid, I was creative, and I still love creative hobbies, etc. So I think that for all the changes we have in our adulthood, there's so many ways that just the core of who we are was there when we were 3 or 9 or 12 and riding our bike or dancing and screaming because we were removed from the dance floor. So I think that a lot of us spend a lot of time kind of seeking. We're constantly looking and we're reading self-help books and we're listening to podcasts, but the answer is often really rooted in who we were in the first 10 or 15 years of our life.
Wow, that's so powerful. Can you give, so, we gave an example of dance and you mentioned bike. What are some other things for those people who still associate running as exercise or going to the gym, lifting weights, and like everything they think of as exercise, they're like, no thanks.
Yeah.
So what are some other examples just to get people's imaginations running?
Yeah, I think that a lot of my clients have goals related to exercise that they don't associate with exercise. So I have heard things like gardening. I have heard things like being and playing with grandchildren or children. I have heard travel and being on beaches, and those aren't things that we have on our Fitbits. We're not pressing the button and gathering data when we go out to the garden. We're typically not hitting that button on our Apple Watch when we take a walk down the beach. Those things are so seamless for us that we do it because we enjoy them. And that's really what we're looking for. Is I'm not against tracking. I wear a Fitbit myself, but I think that we should be looking for stuff in the exercise realm that actually doesn't even feel like exercise. And my personal version of it for my clients is anything where you're vertical and moving. It can be dancing in your bedroom. It can be, I've seen some Instagrammers posing for selfies that I would consider exercise. It's just anything where we're kind of moving around and doing something that's just not sitting on our bum.
Yeah, I love that. Turn the Netflix off or put it in front of a stationary bike. I don't know.
Yeah, there's two things I want to share. One is this is not scientific. This is like my dirty math. But earlier in the pandemic, I saw some data that showed that exercise had increased for those who were already exercising and decreased for those who were not. And I had a moment where I realized all of us have 24 hours in the day. We're supposed to be sleeping for 8. So that leaves 16 hours in a day. The average American is actually not achieving 10,000 steps, but we're going to be generous and say that we all do. And we're going to say that that takes about an hour and a half. So that leaves us with 14 and a half hours a day that we're not tracking any steps. And again, if we're on the more generous end and we say, okay, well, I was standing at my sink and washing dishes, but I wasn't counting steps. Let's say that's another hour and a half in a day where we're maybe standing making a sandwich, or we're washing some dishes, or we're brushing our teeth, or something that's vertical, but we're not accumulating steps. So that leaves more of our day where we are actually not moving, and we're probably not even standing. And so one of the challenges I give to people is because most people don't think of ourselves as sedentary. We think that our self-definition is rarely, oh, I'm a very sedentary person. But I want you to think about that math for yourself. If you're not getting those 10,000 steps, that means that you're not even in that 14 and a half hours a day where you're not moving. So I think that we need to get really real with ourselves, and we don't need New Year's resolutions. We need to look at that number and say, okay, I've just spent 13 and a half hours of my day, or 12 and a half hours of my day where I'm not moving. How can I move? And these things don't need to be formal exercise programs at gyms. They don't need to be with an instructor. I mean, I am an instructor, so obviously I have a slight favoritism towards using some services, but at the end of it, most of us can take care of really basic movements of our body if we just have that awareness. My grandma is 98 years old, and I think back to what her life was like as a child, and I wasn't there, obviously, but if you wanted to visit a neighbor, she had to get up, put her jacket on, and walk a kilometer, which is a half a mile down the road to visit neighbors. If I want to chat with a friend, I lean to the left, reach into my right pocket, pull my phone out, and can instantly connect with them. So that's a huge change in less than 100 years. So I've seen a lot of conversation in the last, couple years about comparing us now to cavemen. We don't have to go that far back to think about vacuuming and doing laundry and seeing neighbors. And, when I was a kid, we had to actually stand up and change the channel on the TV. So I think that that's where we start to get into that 12 and a half, 13 and a half hours a day where we're sedentary. So I think I see a comment that says, I love being vertical. So vacuuming, dusting, moving things around the house, that totally counts as exercise. And I think that that's one of the biggest changes that we can make for ourselves in 2021 is rip up the New Year's resolutions and just start to do some basic math. Are you vertical? Yes. That's what we need in our life. We need to be vertical and not kind of just sitting on our phone and not just taking in, and I do it. I love Facebook. Facebook and Zoom have really consumed a lot of our day parts, and any moments where we can generate some exercise. And I love that you're a cleaner. Can you come clean my house? And that's something a lot of people love, cleaning and organizing. And we'll even, I read Marie Kondo's books, and she'll talk about that was her childhood passion. So there's people who love cleaning, organizing, and folding things, and that's exercise too.
Absolutely. And it's funny, because I will be sitting here and I do use my hands a lot, and then I'll be like, I did not just get 300 steps.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a hand talker as well. And you're right. If they're on our wrist, it's tracking that. And that's okay too, because it's still better than, sitting, scrolling. Scrolling doesn't count at all for anybody ever.
I need a Fitbit for my thumb.
It's true. It's true.
That's awesome. So another big piece of the puzzle would be eating. Like, so what
Yes.
tips do you have there?
I'm big on the rule of 3 things, and I use this for money and I use this for food. Diets don't work. We all know that. And one of the reasons that diets don't work is because we set off with lofty goals that we're never going to eat a whole food category ever again in our life. And I don't know about you, but I have more than half my life left to go if we're using statistics for how long I'm supposed to live. So the idea that I would never eat cake again, or that I would never have another dessert, or that I would never eat bread again is really an overreach. And I think that when we set out on a diet, and we often call these things lifestyle programs now, we believe, and we really do believe, and we want to believe in that moment that this is possible, that we can go another 45 or 50 or 70 years without ever having bread. And this year has really shown a lot of us the importance of social gatherings and socializing. And at the end of it, food and nutrition is, this is again fake science. It's not real science, but it's at least 50% about social gatherings and socializing, whether we're eating with our family, whether we're celebrating. Every celebration basically on this planet involves food of some kind. So food is community, and food is how we share with each other. It isn't a solo exercise. It can be in the pantry when we're sneaking chips at me. But so I'm really big on ditching the diets, ditching lifestyle programs, ditching fad programs. That includes our ketos and our paleos and our Atkins diets and everything like that. And instead, figuring out the 3 indulgences that we are living for. So for me, it's champagne, chocolate, and chips. And I know I'm good, right? I don't care about cake. I don't care about cookies. I don't care about squares. I don't care about fancy indulgent coffees. So I save my indulgences for those 3 things. And it's not always possible, but most celebrations will involve one of those 3 things for me. So I really lean into those. And it doesn't mean I'm binge eating chocolate, but I eat those without reservation, without guilt, because those are the 3 best foods that I can think of on this planet. And then I can say no to a lot of other things because I just don't care. When I rank them in order, I'm like, I don't care. I can give up cookies because I can have my 3 indulgences. Or when I'm at a celebration where some of those things are present, I know what's going to really give me that bang for my buck.
I love that. I'm trying to think what my 3 indulgences would be, and I put that in the chat. So if anybody wants to share theirs, that'll be fun. Yeah, I love champagne and chocolate. I'm like, yeah, those are probably at least 2 of them.
And it's funny because for all the diet and nutrition conversation on this planet, I don't really run across that tip very often. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever really seen it printed anywhere. So I think that it's a fun thing that most of us haven't really thought about. And if we can lean into those and eat more of those, what tends to happen is it does crowd out the things we don't care about. We have this going on in other areas of our life as well. Most of us have hobbies where we spend most of our time. We have places where we spend most of our money. And if we can do that with our food, we're going to be happier. And we're going to crowd out stuff that we're just trying to. Haven't you had this experience where you eat something, you're like, I have a food craving, and then you eat something, and you're like, no, that wasn't it. And then you try something else, and you're like, I don't know, that wasn't quite it. And then you keep going until you kind of find it. And if you already know, I see Julie says bread, chocolate, and ice cream. Get after it, and you can skip kind of all the nuzzling on pretzels and experimenting with, a cake or a pie. just have what you actually really value.
Okay, I figured out my third one.
What are your two?
Oh, I'm going to steal your champagne and chocolate.
I think a lot of people are going to steal that. Anyway.
I think it's a good one. Yeah, I love me a loaded baked potato.
Oh, yes. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. So I'm big on the notion of crowding out. We can, instead of cutting out, we can crowd out. We can cram in these amazing things that really feel indulgent and worth it. And you'll find if you really only have 3 things, you're not going to, so I'm going to take Julie's example. A lot of people are afraid that if they start eating bread, they're going to eat like a loaf of bread every day. I can assure you, you might do that a day, 2 days. You might even do it 3 or 4 days in a row, but you're not going to eat a loaf of bread every day for the rest of your life. So often what we instead do is we cut out the things that we really love. So I know a lot of diets that cut out Julie's list of bread, chocolate, and ice cream. And then we try to fill that void, and we're never going to be able to kind of dance around that. There is typically, though, a lot of fear that if we invite that in, we're just going to binge on it and we're going to never stop binging. But even your favorites, there's still only so much champagne you can drink. There's still only so much chocolate you're going to eat. And when you know that you have unilateral permission from yourself to have that any day of your life, and in fact, every day of your life, you're going to not feel like it's something that you need to overeat or binge on.
Yeah, that's so true. Because if it's no longer taboo or forbidden, and then it's like, I don't really actually want it right now. It'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you tend to do is you tend to upgrade it. So you tend to stop buying the cheap chocolate, and you're like, yeah, let's get some really good chocolate, and let's do that upgrade on the champagne, and let's just, you buy the nicer stuff, because if those are your 3 indulgences, get in there. Did you think you were your third?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the loaded baked potatoes. I'm gonna totally have that. And then
and then you have your chocolate and your
chocolate. And then I'm trying to think, like, I do like champagne. Sorry, my cat wants to tell us her 3. She's crazy. Now I've totally lost my train of thought. Thanks, Ginger. And I have hair all over. I told you, I live in the real world, and here we are.
Welcome to life.
Welcome to life. It's 2020, guys. It's fine. Yes. So, yeah, I do like champagne, but I wouldn't say that that's my go-to frequently enough to probably actually listen to indulgence. I'd have to think about that.
And that's the other thing. You can actually rotate and shuffle those, and you can change them. It's not like you have to make a list and then you're stuck with it and that's the end of it. But what I would encourage is that you actually have intentionality, and it's not just like, oh, and tonight this is going to be what's on the list. And, just go through that and actually choose it. You can do it once a month. You can do it once a quarter, once a year, whatever it is. And that doesn't mean that you need to cut everything else out, but I just would encourage you not to change it based on what's in front of you. Otherwise, I'd have all kinds of things on that list that actually I don't value that much.
Yeah. I have 3 things for breakfast, 3 things for lunch.
Exactly. Oh, man. Yeah, I think a lot of us are actually eating a lot of stuff that we like, or that we think are okay, or that are kind of half good. But I think when we start to treat our body and our jobs and our exercise and our hobbies like we have to edit them into those top 3 things, and we really use that focused intentionality, we're upgrading the message that we send to ourselves about what we're worth. And we're upgrading that message to ourselves about where we're spending our time and our calories and how we're really treating ourselves. And that's a huge step to creating that life you love. And I, of course, have a bias towards this, but I actually feel like the bottom of the pyramid of the life we love is really how we feel in our bodies. So it's going to be really hard for most of us if we're feeling achy and we're feeling bloated and we're feeling cranky because we've got a sore neck or our back, that's not the optimal sensation for which to actually seek that amazing job that you're looking for, or seek that amazing partner to marry, or seek anything that's amazing in your life. So I think that we have to sleep, we have to eat really nutritious foods, and no one likes this, but we have to eat vegetables. There's no getting out of it. There's no kind of secret shortcut in this planet. Never has been and never will be to eating vegetables as a pathway to feeling great. And we have to move our body. We have to get vertical. Again, there's no secret shortcut around it. We have to exercise. And that's the base of the pyramid to creating that life you love.
Absolutely. So I love, like, because you validate what I've put out there. And I have one bad review on Amazon, and they said, I'm so sick of these self-help books that just tell me I need to sleep more and drink more water. And I was like, but you do.
You do. And I think that, I mean, that's the greatest comment ever, because I think that in my lifetime, I've observed personally 20 different diets that try to skirt that, and different kinds of exercise plan. I've seen the 7-minute high intensity interval training. And at the end of it, we're humans. We can't outsmart our biology. We've got to sleep, we've got to drink water, and we've got to eat vegetables. And it's so boring. But we can't create a fancy diet or a fancy workout program that kind of overrides that human biology. So, I mean, that sucks for that Amazon person, but it's just, that's just how it is.
No, I'm shocked that, and now don't everybody like run out there and say mean things to me on Amazon, but I'm shocked there's only one and there's like 50 good ones. So I'm like, you know.
That's, yeah. And it, actually, quite frankly, if that's the worst thing someone has to say, that's pretty good. So,
yeah, because I'm like, well, yeah, I stand behind what I wrote. So, yeah.
I would get a bad review too, because that's really my big secret formula to success too. I walk as much as I can in a day and in a week. It's a little weather dependent right now. I make sure that I'm hydrated, I'm eating my vegetables, and I try to make sure that I get proper sleep. And I notice when one or more of those things is out of whack. So there is, in Buddhist philosophy, something called the Wheel of Life, or the Circle of Life. Are you familiar with
that? I just kind of learned about it for a workshop we're putting together for next weekend for teachers. Nope, not this weekend, this Sunday for teachers. If you guys haven't registered yet, get on there. But yes, please explain it, because I'm not the one explaining it in the workshop. It's my co-teacher, but yeah.
It's a great concept. So basically, I've seen the wheel or the circle divided up. I've seen it with different names, and I've seen it divided up in different kind of pie slices. But if you think about a pie, a literal physical pie that you eat, or a pizza, we can divide that. You cut it up and down, you cut it vertically, you cut it across, you cut it across. So think about that concept. And basically, we can categorize our life into different areas. So we have our physical activity. We have our finances. We've got our primary relationship, which tends to be a romantic relationship. We've got other relationships, which is friendships, community, other family members. We've got creativity, spirituality. We've got our education, etc. So again, I've seen different iterations. You can build your own pie. But essentially, there's an interconnectedness to all of these. It's a circle. So if we think of the old-fashioned carriage wheel with the hub in the center and the spokes that come out. If you're going to pull out one or two of those spokes because they're kind of broken down and they're not functional, that wheel isn't going to roll very well. That's what happens in our life. So I have a nutrition coaching program that actually acknowledges this. If we want to change our diet, we want to feel happy and healthy, but we're going through a divorce, that's going to be an integrated solution, because we can't just change our diet and, oh, life's great, we're good. If we hate our jobs and we are dying to get out of our core career, we're not going to feel our optimal healthy best because we've got stress from this hatred and fear and anger and resentment and just not feeling great. So exercise and nutrition are what I professionally focus on, but I acknowledge that all the rest exist because I've never, ever, ever had a client that doesn't know the difference between a potato chip and a carrot. And so if we have eating habits that are not serving our body in its highest capacity, I mean, humans want to stay alive. We biologically have a drive to stay alive. So why aren't we exercising? There isn't an adult in North America who has not been delivered the message that we need to exercise. This isn't, I'm not saying something new that you've never heard before. So if you're not doing it, why? And we usually can see something on that wheel of life that is out of balance. And so exercise and nutrition are two of the chunks on the wheel, and they're interrelated and correlated, but they have to kind of change at the same time. So there's some exercises online. I think if you Google Wheel of Life, you can see them, or Circle of Life. But basically it takes the wheel and then you kind of self-evaluate where you are on each of those. All of us are going to have some high points. All of us are going to have some low points. But just know that changes in exercise and diet are going to impact other areas of your life and vice versa. So when I start working with my clients and they start feeling better in their body, then they start making changes to that career that they don't like. It goes the other way as well. So when we get rid of the crappy career that we don't like, all of a sudden the diet and the exercise become easier. So I think in January, a lot of us try to take those two components, diet or exercise, and we try to just disconnect from the rest of our life. But nothing is really that different on December 31st versus January 1st in terms of if you're miserably unhappy in your marriage or your career or some other area of your life, that diet and exercise program is going to feel like a sludge to get through. So we have to kind of be open to making these changes concurrently and be aware that if we're relying on willpower and thinking that losing 20 pounds and being on this ultra clean diet where we never eat another carb in our life is going to be the solution to happiness, we're going to have to really dig into willpower in ways that, there's a reason that a lot of these programs fail within 2 weeks. And it's because we have to really acknowledge the holistic aspect of the changes. So I've both told you that it's a pyramid and a circle, but both of them show an interrelation that we really have to acknowledge. So when you talked earlier about living your best life, your health and fitness have to be somewhere on that chart because we cannot have amazing careers and hop in finances and great relationships if we're neglecting our health and eating potato chips and just feeling like garbage, but vice versa.
It's so true. And yeah, I've found that when I start feeling that I'm off, I'm missing a spoke of my wheel or one's shorter and I'm getting a pretty bumpy ride.
Yes.
And I finally get the self-awareness because I don't always, figure it out within the first 5 minutes. It might take 5 days.
I don't know.
Then I have to go back to basics. I'm like, okay, have I been doing my gratitude journal? Have I been going for my walks? Have I been drinking my water? Have I been staying up too late? And just get back to basics. And then as soon as I kind of realize oh, I've kind of laxed in this area. Let's bring it back. My focus was on this, but then all of a sudden I have energy and I'm like, oh, and I want to do this and this. And then it really starts rolling.
If we think about having an infant, if we've ever cared for one or held a baby, the basic human needs are food, hydration, sleep. If the baby isn't sleeping, it's going to cry. If the baby is hungry or thirsty, it's going to cry. If the baby isn't getting proper human attention, it's going to cry. So adults disconnect from that idea that we're different from babies, but biologically, a baby dies without connection, without food, / water. It's kind of interchangeable for a baby. And without sleep, there's no way for that baby to exist. And we are actually not biologically different from a baby. That is the foundation of what makes an adult be able to survive. So I often think, I love what you said about creating that base level of habits. I have 4 of them myself, just like you do. And when we get really off track, we actually often will just forget what those are because we've lost our sleep, we've lost our hydration, our nutrition is crap, so our brain is not thinking properly. And then we need to go back to that list. And there is no list for a human being that doesn't include hydration / food, sleep, and connection and community. It doesn't exist. But that's where I would encourage you to write it out, post it somewhere so that when you have those emergency feelings that you can go back to it and start to take those steps to recover.
Absolutely. How amazing. So where can people connect with you, Janis?
My business name is My Body Couture, which is 3 words. My, M-Y, body, B-O-D-Y, couture, C-O-U-T-U-R-E. So I'm at mybodycouture.com. You can also find me and connect with me on both Facebook and Instagram. So I encourage you to reach out, send me a message, send me a friend or follow request, and we can connect there.
Awesome. I put it in the chat, but then also it's already in the description. And if you're watching the replay, it'll be in the show notes, all the links to all the social media and everything like that. And I think in your application, you had mentioned some type of freebie on your website.
There is a $75 gift card. So if you sign up for the mailing list, that is for services, and I love to help build out a custom fitness or nutrition program. I specialize in working one-to-one with people so they can really dig into, this is what's happening in my life, these are the hurdles that I personally have, and then we can help build you a custom program of sensible, reasonable, practical, doable tips and solutions that you can actually implement.
And you'll help them pick their 3.
And I help people pick their 3. It's one of my favorite things ever.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. This has been fun and very informative. It's just so exciting to it's just such a good time of year, and it's important to have that foundation all year, but for whatever reason, around now and around spring break, everyone starts thinking about, how am I going to create a life I love? And so getting back to those basics.
And I do want to make one last comment about New Year's resolutions. So the best time to actually make a New Year's resolution is in the spring. Oh. So that could be, it depends on where you are in the country, but it could be March and it could be April or May. But somewhere in that phase when we get a little bit more greenery outside, the days are a little bit longer, the grass and the trees are starting to bud, we have a natural sense of renewal at that time of year. All you have to do is look outside. Nature's doing it. So a lot of us are trying to make these New Year's resolutions kind of in what is naturally a bit of a hibernating season. And so what I would encourage you to do instead is do some of your programming where you're making those lists and you're implementing some small habits and you're kind of doing plans so that when that spring time comes that you can start to implement it in a bit of a, it's easier to eat vegetables in the spring. It's easier to go for walks in the spring. A lot of stuff becomes a lot easier. So don't beat yourself up about New Year's resolutions because they kind of suck.
They do. Absolutely. So, and I mean, that ties great into, I started working last night on, I had a little mini course called The Free Guide to Goal Tracking, and I'm completely revamping it. And because I think people are kind of like, what are the goals? What's my vision for the year type of thing. And last January had a hit with, an in-person vision board party, not happening this January. Thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how can I still serve everybody with that? And so it will still remain free, but I'm revamping it and we'll get that out in my community soon. And it's just going to take you through how to kind of identify what goals you might want to work on, and then how to track them, set them, tips, free apps, like all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm excited
That's awesome.
yeah, I'm super excited. I'll have to send you a copy.
Yes, please. I would love to see it.
Because it's a little mini course. So there's like little tiny videos and then a workbook, because, you know, I'm a teacher. So I got to have like your worksheets. And
That's awesome. I mean, I think that especially coming through a New Year's during this COVID window of life, having hope for the future and having something to look forward to is really critical. And I think I saw a lot of really funny memes about how we were all looking forward to the best year ever in 2020, and that's not really what we got. But I think that some of the things that are really going to appear on the 2021 list are not going to be great vacations, and they're not going to be some of the things that might have been on there earlier. So I think that it's such a good year to really do some work like that, because we're going to find out a bit more of what's inside us as opposed to kind of some of those really external things. Most of us want to feel better in our body, and we want to have hope that we can have a better career and great relationships. And so I think that you actually really, really, really more than ever need to get that course out there, because as Julie's saying, it's very critical to have hope.
I so agree. And thank you everybody for showing up, and I will get all that information out. It's out there right now in a version that I created like a year ago, but I've learned and grown so much. And so I'm like, oh, I could incorporate this and this. And yeah, so that idea hit me yesterday and I started working on it, and I'm like so excited about it.
I was laughing in like April because I'm like, it's funny because everything that's probably ever been written in the self-help canon is going to be completely obsolete pre-2020 versus post-2020. So I think we've all learned and grown and just had a lot of internal experiences this year, and that will actually probably serve us quite well because we've had a lot of things taken away from us. And so we've had to emotionally process, and we've had to deal with some difficult things and feelings, and just really get into what those important elements of life are. I can tell you that I appreciate human connection more than I ever knew I did.
Yeah. I call this my COVID baby, this podcast, because it was something people would ask, oh, are you ever going to start a podcast? And I'm like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And my evenings and weekends were filled with dancing.
Awesome.
Turns out dancing's not a pandemic-friendly hobby.
No.
So all of a sudden I was home a lot and missing that connection. And ta-da, here we are. So good things have happened in 2020.
Yes. Well, I'm happy that we connected. This was really fun.
This was super fun. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us on the Create a Life You Love video podcast. I would absolutely love to connect with you one-on-one and dig deep into any challenge you're facing during a 15-minute complimentary coaching call. Head over to the link in the show notes to book a time. And also, if you are an educator, or if you know any educators, or if your children have educators, maybe this could be a Christmas gift. I'm partnering with a fellow coach who's a former teacher, and we're offering a virtual retreat for educators this Sunday, December 20th from 3 to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so head over to the link in the show notes to save your seat or to purchase a seat for an educator you know as a gift. It will be live, but anybody who is registered will have access to a replay. So even if it doesn't work in their schedule, they will be able, and they will go through the Wheel of Life exercise that Katie will lead. Yeah. And we're going to pull in some of the things from my neuro coaching and all the things. So it's going to be pretty fun. So thank you everyone who is here tonight and joined us. Thank you so much, Janis.
Thank you.